This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so I just finished running this course on scripting in Visual Basic, and something that I didn't cover in the course very well in the lecture material, at least, was how to call subfunctions from within a function. So what we had done up until this point here is if I want to like run a function and I press play here, I can find the function that I want to run. So here's exercise 1 and master table in this tab. So master table.exercise1, and then I can hit run. But notice this function isn't showing up in this list. Find first row isn't anywhere in here. And that's because this function requires variables to be passed to it or passed from it. And if I just hit run, there's nowhere necessarily to take this variable that's input or this variable that's output and put it somewhere afterward. So that's why we don't see it show up. So whenever we define a function like this, it's not meant to be just executed with a play button. Instead, it's meant to be executed using like a form from Excel where the inputs are referenced on the form and then passed into here directly, or else called from another function. So within another function like this one. So don't worry too much about what the code is here or what it's telling you you're supposed to be working on. I just opened this exercise as kind of a template so that I can play around with calling functions. So what you notice here is that first row and first row, these two are the same variable. And you know the way that I call this function has a open and close parenthesis with two variables in it. This one has an open and close parenthesis with two variables in it. So this I corresponds to this sheet, and this first row corresponds to this first row. But you don't have to have the same value in here. So if I want to hash what sheet I'm talking about, and I wind up using this sheet in some kind of like sheets, some kind of sheets command later on, you know, something like that. So I need to know which sheet to reference. I can pass it a variable. I can also just pass it like a number. And what'll happen down here when I run this function is this too got passed down into this. And so now this variable sheet, wherever it appears inside of this routine, will be equal to 2. So my second sheet, geology table 1, if I output this function, you'll see that a 2 just popped up down there. Okay, cool. So just kind of verifying that I can pass values from here down to here. And notice that I never used first row, it remained empty, and I never defined it up here and it remained empty. The convention is whatever your outputs are meant to be from one function from the function that you call back into the main function, you list them at the end. So I've listed this one first and then comma, and then I've listed this one second. So this is supposed to be a variable that is returned back to this one. So maybe for some reason, I don't want to have my output into Excel from this subfunction. I want to do that up in here. So I might say like sheets, I just say 2 just to keep it consistent. Ignore the for variable. And then I'll just say sheets 2 at cells 1 equals first row. So I'm going to take this second sheet here where I've got that highlighted cell, and I'm going to fill it with whatever is first row. So right now, if I run this, nothing will happen because I never defined first row. So if I come down here maybe and I say first row equals howdy, and I'll put a breakpoint there, a breakpoint here, and here. So now when I run this, I'm gonna run exercise 1. First row is still empty. I haven't defined it yet. 2 is 2. When I get down into here, sheet now equals 2. First row is still empty because I'm on but have not executed past this line. And then when I press play again, now I'm done with this sub function. I'm out of here. Notice when I mouse over this, nothing happens. That's because Visual Basic is no longer looking in or dealing with this routine down here. So I'm now back into my main function, and you notice first row is equal to howdy. So it successfully pulled that back from here. And so notice that I didn't have to say like first row equals. I can just say call first row. And whatever variables I put in here can be passed back and forth. If they share a name, then whatever this outputs into first row will be the same as this first row. If an input variable is adjusted and it shares the same name as the variable back up here, then it'll also be outputted. So input and output variables are interchangeable in that way. And that's why we have a convention of putting the output variables at the end of the list. You can have more variables than one. There's nothing stopping me from having lots of different variables in here. All right, so let's just finish this. And so we see howdy comes to there, and then we're all done. No, I had two for loop with two things in it. So this is now howdy overwritten on top of howdy. And then now we're done.